discussion about analyzing resources. So I want to look first at some of the ideas that we have going on for analyzing resources. You can also see these in the session 2 overview. So we give you these directions for the discussion. We say that we want you to use the resource worksheet and evaluate those resources against the resource checklist. And then we want you to share surprising points that you have learned. And then finally, we want to look at secondary and primary resources. So what does that really look like? So obviously this is in the session 2 overview as well, but I want you to think about some of the pieces here because I want you to start thinking about building blocks. So part of what we're doing by filling out this resource worksheet is that we're creating a full reference for ourselves, not just of where we're going to find this reference, but of our impressions of that reference and what we have found it to say and do. You may not have something to share for every part of this space, and obviously the blanks are small, so we want to be focused. We want to be terse. We don't want to be flowery and effusive about what we found. We just want to put in a few key elements. Then we want to evaluate that based on the resource checklist. We want to say, hey, I have 3 resources that I found and I shared them in my outline. And now I want to look at them really in detail and say, do they work? Are they going to get me where I want to go? And based on the information that we learn and gather, we are then going to be able to find more resources, feeling more confident and more equipped to find the best resources. Finally, we're saying, as a building block, how did this assignment help us? How did looking at these checklists help us evaluate what we have gathered and sort of understand what we should be gathering and understanding on a greater level? And that's what we're sharing with our peers, not just things that we're going to take with us and that interested us, but maybe something that could be helpful to others. And obviously you can include these checklists. You can attach 1 or 2 of them with your work if you would like, but those checklists are primarily for you, so you can decide if you want to share them or not. The main idea is to share what your APA reference looks like so that I can support you in making that ready for your paper and so that everyone knows kind of where you're going and where you've been. Finally, we're looking at primary versus secondary. And remember, this is just sort of your first step into this ground. So I don't expect it to be something where you walk away going, oh, I totally get that. It's something that you're going to evolve an understanding of. So some examples of primary things would be things like a diary, things that are hands-on. Secondary is the person who's reading that diary. We are getting to view it. Secondary is something where you are reviewing what has gone before. And sometimes what you're going to read is both. We are looking at building blocks, and the same way that we use those to build something for ourselves in this class, researchers are doing that. They're looking at building blocks, using some, and also crafting their own. So you may find that researchers are doing both. They are both using publications and research that has gone before, and they're using that to influence their current research. So let's look at some more pieces of this. It sounds great to say do all of these things, but what does that really look like? So let's get this PowerPoint out of the way, and I want to look at some of our previews. So we have our worksheet, and we have our evaluating checklist. So we have these ideas going, but first we're going to go over here to our library page. And the other day there's a video that I just put up about this concept, and we are going to go in and find a folder, and I've decided to do a folder on adult education, which is something most of us are doing. And I'm going to click on the articles that I've already saved. So I went through and I started to find some things. I started to say, what's out there? What does it look like? Remember that I use things like full text so that all of them are readily available. I've done things like what's available from 2009 to 2019 because I want really new things. And then I just put in basic words like adult education and adult education theory. So what I did after that is head over here to this article, Taking Time to Learn, the Importance of Theory for Adult Education. So a couple of things that I have here. I have my Cite button on the right, and I also have the ability to download it. So what does it look like when you download it? If you click on that PDF full text button, it's going to open a new window most likely, and you see this. And again, you're asking, how do I download that? Well, we need to swoop our mouse down near the bottom middle, and I'm just gently wiggling my finger to find a spot. And I can see on the right-hand side this little computer with an arrow. Well, when I click on that, as you can see, it gave me a little bump up. It said, hey, you're downloading that. I've downloaded it a couple times, so you can see. So that is one of the ways that we can bring that in. And then over here, I want to go back to the Cite button, because that is where I'm going to gain some information for my worksheet. So we have this worksheet with all of these details, but what I have done is made us a copy and started to put our information into it. So part of what I'm going to get is from the article itself, and part of it is here in our APA example. So one thing that I like to do is I copy and paste these. I go ahead and put them in my references so that I have all of those details ready to go. But what if you're not doing APA later? What if later you're doing a paper with Chicago? Well, you'll need the full name, which is why this is so useful. We go ahead and we put things like the person's first name and their last name. And then later, we get to pick how we want to use that. For doing APA, we're just going to use a P. If we're using another type like MLA, we're going to say Patricia. That gives us the opportunity to go back and look. So now that I've downloaded the article, I want you to see what that looks like. So when I download it, they're all going to be a little bit different. This is my particular reader. Who knows what differences your reader will have. But what I did is I opened up my toolbar so that I can make annotations. So one of the things I've done already is I've gone through here and I found my thesis and I've underlined it in green. I also found some of the elements of process that she's sharing so that I already was able to go in and start to fill in what the main points of the paper are and what I sort of view her concept as. So there are two ways to do this paper topic. I just did the paper topic here, sort of evaluating it. But something that you could do is to go ahead and say down here, you know, hey, I want to put in the actual thesis. So I could copy this. And I'm just going to plug it in under main point. I'm going to be like, this is the thesis, so that I have it to refer back to. And we have it right here. And then we can go ahead and type that in. So one of the things I learned by looking at this is that I probably don't want to use this article, because I was thinking about a paper in terms of how we are viewing adult education, and this is about using theories to implement how we deal with adult education. And there's sort of two different processes. So that's what we're going to put in here. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for. We're going to say, oh, this is cool. I'm learning about these different ideas. She's using neoliberal and feminist criticism. I tend to use reader response criticism, and I tend to use disability theory criticism. So there are lots of different critical theories out there to use. That's not really the discussion point that she's having here. So down here under how does this apply, I can say, hey, this didn't really work for today. But as you will see by filling out all these different elements, but there are some neat concepts that could apply to a paper on theory and when I'm ready to use theory. So that's what we're looking for. We may want to share this for everyone else just so that they can kind of see where we're going. But the idea is that you're looking at all of these and you're saying, what do I get out of this? How is this helping me? And as you can see, I haven't filled out everything. I decided to call it other because it's a journal, and journal is not one of these. You could call it a database. You could debate some of those. It has stuff for a website, but I'm not putting that in because I'm accessing a journal through the library. It's not quite like using a website. But again, all of these are sort of debatable points that you are going in and saying, how could I use them? How will they help me with what I need to do today. And that's what you're going to start to see with each of these elements. And I don't have to say a lot, but it helps me to have all of that information available. And then later, if I'm doing another paper, I can go through these resource worksheets and see what I've read, when I've read it, and what I took out of it. So think about every assignment as part of our larger building block. We are writing a paper, and every assignment that we work on in sessions 1 through 4 should make that paper clearer. They should help us organize, define, and research that paper, and should create questions that you then ask me. So I hope this helps you get started, and I hope that it leads to more questions and more insights, and I look forward to answering those questions.